In this tutorial we're going to look at creating what we call the basic Lego blocks. From these two parts we can derive most of our dimensions for any Lego part to follow. You need to remember that these parts need to be interchangeable and work together. The first one here, from this handout that the students were given in class, the taller block is 10 millimeters tall, and we use dimensions of 8 by 8 for the base. We do have a shell thickness or a wall thickness of 1.5. This 1.5 shell thickness will allow a pin that is 5 millimeters in diameter to fit inside there tightly. The height of the pin is 1.5 millimeters. And the only difference to the shorter block is the overall height. If you're using Legos, when you stack 3 of these shorter blocks on top of each other, they equal one tall block, which is 10. By putting in the dimension of 10 divided by 3 for your overall height, you'll get that repeating decimal of 3.333 and so on. This does affect your final assembly. So when you put in the thickness of these thinner blocks, make your height 10 divided by 3. So we're going to take a look at constructing both of these parts, and as well as selecting material and changing the color. First thing to start out with, these parts are all in metric. We're in millimeters. We need to change our units. I would start with a sketch in the top plane. I would draw a square that is 8 millimeters by 8 millimeters. And we're going to extrude this. I'm going to start by making the taller block first, which has an overall height of 10. From the top we're going to add the pin. Make sure that this pin is in the center. If this pin is not in the center, that will affect your assembly later on. It's a 5 millimeter diameter, and it has a height of 1.5 millimeters. From here we need to create the bottom detail. In order to hollow this out, we're just going to use our shell tool. By selecting the bottom surface and selecting the shell feature, we're going to make that shell thickness 1.5 millimeters. What this has created on the bottom is a 5 millimeter square. So to make this interchangeable, this diameter of this circle will be 5. That way the pin fits inside the bottom of any adjoining blocks. So that was the tall one. The only difference to make the short one is the overall height. So if we sketch in the top plane, we'll sketch another another square that is 8 by 8. But when we extrude this one, we want this height to be 10 divided by 3. And this will affect your final assembly when you stack these on top of each other. Again, we're going to add the pin on the top. In the center, and that's a 5 millimeter diameter, and that is 1.5 millimeters tall. And in order to create the bottom detail on these parts, just shell the bottom and a shell thickness of 1.5. So that's the part construction itself. What about changing the color and materials? Legos are made out of plastic, and in actuality it's high density polystyrene, but every time you have to come and find that, it's a little difficult to find in your plastics list. I'm okay with you just selecting ABS since it's the first one listed in plastics. Changing the color. Under appearances, when you select plastics, my recommendation is to use a low gloss plastic, unless you want that glossy, shiny finish, because one of the things you have to do later on in the project is render this. Rendering in Photo View 360, it has that light source. That light source will reflect off of the surface. So my suggestion is to use a low gloss plastic. You have a few options here of colors to pick from. If this is not a color that you want to choose from, that your color isn't listed here, first select a low gloss plastic. That will change the surface finish. If you want to change the color in your heads-up display, you want to use a part that is not found in the materials list. If you want to use something like orange, change your to orange. You want something that's baby blue, you can change that too. You want a different shade of red or to make it pink, you may do that too. But the first thing is select the low gloss plastic so you get that dull finish when you go to render this. So you can choose whatever color you want. So that is how we construct our basic parts, change the material, and change the color.